Now, whatever I have done is due to my naivety with which I entered Indology. You know, I had told you I went to India not even knowing what the climate will be like. You know, these wonderful biographies when you can say, even as a young child, I dreamt of going to India. No, I didn't dream. In fact, I had prejudices against India before I went. Yeah? To cut it short, during those first 4 years of my stay in India, 60 to 64,
Yeah.
I more or less became what we call an Indologist, but not a typical one. There is a German word, Seiteneinsteiger, somebody who enters a career literally from the side. And that's what I was in Indology. And at that time, you know, I started very shyly using my Hindi in Delhi. And I made certain observations, you know, if I may give it an example, a taxi driver would not react to my English when I said, hurry up, no change. And then I took all my courage and told him, Jaldi karo. And immediately, instinctively, he reacted. So I was, in 1960, I was a lecturer in German at Delhi University. And teaching German to the students, I sooner or later discovered that my English at certain points did not reach them, really. And that made me curious about the local language, whatever local means here. And there was disagreement. Was it Urdu? Was it Punjabi? Was it Hindi? Well, finally I concentrated on what they called Hindi. Now, early observations had taught me, you know, as a foreigner, what you need first, interested in literature, is Indian literature written in English.
Okay.
And the names at that time were Raja Rao, Mulk Raj, Anand, and then I wanted to discuss these authors with my Indian friends, and they hadn't read them. And then I went into this question, and at that time the sense of India, referring to languages, I was most surprised to find out that English was indicated as people's mother tongue. So here was literature read by my friends. It's simple enough. And of course it took me quite some time to get into the subtleties of that language. And I tell you, I was not encouraged in trying to do so by a number of Indians, you know, who will even know when you ask them, why do you write in Why do you write in English? Why do you speak English? One of their arguments is Hindi is a developing language, which I find ridiculous. As a translator from Hindi to German, I know how complicated it is. Very difficult, subtle forms of the verb where German doesn't function. I cooperated with the Max Muller Bhavan in Delhi, and working my way into this literature, I organized a Kavi Sammela at Max Muller Bhavan. And I made a very heavy mistake for which I was consequently punished. I invited people who would appear in Kavi Sammela, Geetkars, you know, one of them called Doshi. I forget their names. But for some time I thought these were the people who represent Hindi literature. And up to poor Bachchan with his Madhuchara. You know, and I remember one Sammelan at the Red Fort, 26th of January. And there was Bachchanji, who had caught a cold, so wrapped in a shawl, and he was trying to present to the audience something experimental. And you know what Indians do? They started clapping their hands and forced him to recite from Madhuchara. Anyway, in my Kavi Sammela, I still remember, you know, there was a Shamyan in the garden of Max Muller Bhavan, lots of people. By the way, my punishment was having to translate these Geetkars. You know.
And that's what I mean. Kind of realization of their work.
You know, as we say in German, rhyming Stein auf Bein. But then the real discovery, there came somebody with a number of bodyguards, and that somebody was Agye. So I had mixed the Geetkars with Agye, and his bodyguards were at that time Raghvir Sahai, Shrikant Verma, so, you know, at that time very young. I had approached Indian literature or literatures from the point of view of a translator. So, you know, when I felt equal to reading authors like Sumitra Nandan Pant, I tried to imagine how they would sound in German. And I found no. Until one day one of my students said, "Have you tried Agye?" Now the difference between these two is Aguier, from my point of view, is a modern poet insofar that he doubts his medium, language. You know, there is a famous poem by him, Shabd or Satya, and how between them is a wall, and how he could break it. So this doubt, to my mind, in any literature, would be part of any modernity.
Wonderful.
I need not tell you, as a creative author, poet, and storyteller, this writing almost against one's language, knowing it can fail you anytime. No such thing in Pant. The difference between, well, I'll not mention you, but say Aguier, of whom I've translated quite a number of poems, and Raghuveer Sahai, and Vishnu, who has just been published as a tribute to lower middle class life in India, which is usually forgotten by foreigners. They go for colorful turbans, and it's either Brahmins or tribals in research. But those people who surround you in a city like Delhi, for instance, and their life, which is a daily struggle for survival, has been ignored very much. This is why I concentrated on these poems. Kabir, for me, was interesting as a challenge to a German translator. So from the beginning, and I told you how I met Kabir first in that pass course in some college. I was interested in the Sakis, in the Dohas. These two lines rhymed, which are meant to be memorized, and originally were not put down on paper, but were handed on and on. Now the challenge for a German was, how can I get this conciseness, this concision into my language with all its endings and pronouns and all this. There is a collection of Sakis, 125, selected by me, and many of them deal, you know, with or are directed against hypocrisy,
Yes.
false sadhus,
Yeah, caste system.
and the caste system and all.
How do you feel now when you, possibly you are aware that for last at least 5-7 years, Kabir has come into the center in Indian poetry, and he is one who is now, for at least, because it's changing India. When we see the total chemistry of society is changing.
I'm aware of this. You know, to cut it short, To me, Kabir is a medicine to all kinds of diseases of our time. Not only in India, but also to us